Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Jungle, a Cincinnati Bengals podcast brought to you by the folks at the Riverfront and Blue Wire. My name is Caroline Palmer, and joining me today for I think our first time ever
Yeah.
linking up for this podcast is Seth Shaner. So, hello.
Hey, Caroline, you guys are doing a great job. And I want to tell you, I privately texted you and Owen. You officially broke the riverfront as far as the internet goes. The first ever Owen and Caroline short we posted set a record for the most views ever on the riverfront on YouTube. So
Woohoo!
uh, now I'm going to give you all the credit instead of just saying if you talk about Joe Burrow, you get clicks. All right.
All right, I'll take it. I'll take it.
Well,
But
thanks
yeah,
for
we
having me
haven't.
come in here with you. I'm glad. I know Owen's kind of taking some time off, so good to
Yes.
join you here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a couple of important things to talk about. Owen and I have talked about it, but we finally know who's in the 2025 class for the Ring of Honor, which is a big, big deal.
It is, and obviously the caveat always has to come. Maybe 25 years from now it won't matter as much, but the real truth of it is that the Bengals just waited so long to have a of honor in the first place that they're still going through, and the problem becomes and you'll get to the two gentlemen who made it in a moment. But problem becomes if you skip over somebody who's worthy because you've got to go to another era of younger players or more modern players, you hope you didn't leave anybody behind.
Yeah, I think that's key here. I mean, it's really nice to see people from like the more previous generation that they haven't started skipping yet because when we talked about it before, I do still think there's a good solid group of guys that could fill out the next 2 to 3 seasons from that previous generation without having to dip into like of AJ Green, or we talked off pod about Geno Adkins. We don't really have to reach there yet, but it is something that will start conflicting this Ring of Honor in the next 2 to 3 seasons.
Absolutely. And the other side of it, it becomes this is a team thing. This isn't a league thing, all that. So like we could argue one of them, Dave Lapham, right? Lamar
Hmm.
Parrish and Dave Lapham are the two players, the two people. You could argue the merits maybe of Dave Lapham, the player, but Dave
Hmm.
Lapham, the like, he's kind of an icon of Bengals land. You know what I mean? Like he's on the Mount Rushmore of people that if you might not even know who he is, but you've heard the radio calls. So
Yes.
I promise you, like I remember even working for a newspaper back in like 2005 when the Bengals, had that good season 11-5 with Carson Palmer and Chad Johnson. And this guy that I was working at the newspaper with was from like the Washington D.C. area and a Maryland guy. And he comes into work one day and he's like, "Who is this guy on these broadcasts?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's Dave Lapham. Come on, don't you love him?" And it's like
Yeah.
he's our guy. He's a true homer, but he's kind of the mouthpiece of the organization as far as he would be like Joe Nuxall was with the Reds and
Hmm.
that kind of thing, like where everybody knew who he was and he was a good player, but he's a great ambassador for the franchise.
Yeah, I think we briefly touched on it when we went through the nominees about a month ago. Was what stood out to me because I did my research on all these guys. I wasn't familiar with a lot of the names not being from Cincinnati, but one of the things that stuck out to me when I was doing my research on Lapham was that they called him Mr. Bengal. And
Hmm.
like that's just like personifies like how iconic and how just like remarkable and remembered he is by the Cincinnati community. And for me, I was like, he has to be one of the favorites because you don't just go around calling someone Mr. Bengal and then completely passing him up year after year. So I wasn't necessarily surprised to see Lapham's name show up when it came down to who got inducted this year.
No, and it was time. I know some people were lobbying for him last year as well.
Hmm.
Um, and it's interesting. I heard him talking with Dan Horde, his radio partner, who hosts his own radio booth, the Bengals Booth podcast, and they talked this week. And it really comes down to this crazy situation where Dave Lapham did play in Super Bowl 16. So he was a member of a Super Bowl team, a team that made it to the Super Bowl. But the funny thing is, the 70s for someone like myself, I was born in 1979, so I'm older than you. But the two players we're talking about, I don't remember. Okay, as players.
Hmm.
So like it's crazy to me that he was talking about Paul Brown's last year as a coach, and then even a year or two later when they went like um, whatever it was, they were 11-3 because they played 14 game seasons. Um, this idea back then that they just barely missed out on going to a Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like But if they had played, not even one, but had just played in a Super Bowl in the 70s, you wonder how much more famous they might have been. You know what I mean? Like so Ken
Oh,
Riley maybe would
absolutely.
have made it to the Hall of Fame earlier. Those kind of things.
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a good resume boost for those guys, especially when you look at like more like Canton Hall of Fame esque to at least have a Super Bowl appearance. It usually is a lot more helpful.
No doubt about it. Well, Lamar Parrish, as I mentioned, I don't know. I didn't get to see him play. But
Hmm.
everybody you talked to that did, and as much I didn't get to see Ken Riley either. But when they talk about Ken Riley, they talk about Lamar Parrish also. Like they were like apparently just amazing defensive players. But Parrish also returned kicks as well, so he was known for both. A lot of people think he should be in Canton as well.
Yeah, I think his is the second longest punt return Bengals history, I believe. I want to say it's second or third all time for punt return when he did it. But from what I've seen, he was just this very energetic guy, both on and off the field. Had the nickname Leaping Lamar, was very
Yeah,
much into what he did. I don't really think the Bengals went wrong either. I think they were both home run picks for the Ring of Honor. I don't think anyone's going to be disappointed with either of them being there. So I think this should be pretty exciting if you're a Bengals fan.
right. And that's what's amazing too. I will say criticism is warranted that they waited too long and they
Hmm.
never other than the 50th anniversary of the franchise back in 2018, they never took the time to really acknowledge the guys that came before whomever was playing at the time. So like even saying like in 2005 when they went 11-5, I mean, you could have reached back and said, let's have Boomer Esiason come, or something like that. Like but the point is because because they waited so long, but also because it is a ring of honor, right? It's going to be on that facade. It's going to be right
Hmm.
there. Like you don't want to get it wrong. And I could
No.
argue if you go across the street to Great American Ballpark and go into the Hall of Fame there, which is beautiful and amazing, you should go if you haven't been there. There are guys who got into the Reds Hall of Fame who probably don't fit the bill of the moniker. Okay. But I
Hmm.
think, especially when you're talking about like with the idea that Dave Lapham embodies, he's been a Bengal one way or another for 50 plus years. So like,
Hmm.
yeah, you're not getting it wrong with any of these guys, and they're so selective at this point because there's so many to choose from that I don't think you're
Yeah.
ever going to see them put somebody up there who doesn't deserve to be there.
Yeah, for me, the true testament is, and I've talked about with this before, is how they react as like as people. Obviously, these guys both have not played in the league for years, and the fact that the first thing both of them said was, "It means so much to me." Like it
Hmm.
shows a lot to me, like how they react to it as people instead of just being like, "Oh yeah, I knew my name was going to be up there one day." Because I mean, that's a way players do react sometimes. There's like it's just a matter of time, but for me, it's a really respectable and mature and like a way that like I'm not a diehard Cincinnati Bengals fan, but I have the utmost respect for those two after seeing how they've reacted and how like just basically excited and how just like honored they are to join that list
Hmm.
of names.
Well, and again, it's only been happening for a few years now, so it is an
Hmm.
exclusive list, right? They did 4 the
Hmm.
first year, and then have gone 2 every year since. It's not that it's not that big of a list, and
Not yet.
I'm just not yet. And but again, we know there's several players that deserve to be there. So, you know, I I in fact, the funny thing is it's a two-edged sword there because like I said, it's very very applicable to say why did you wait so long? But on the other hand, they have this like treasure trove of players they're never going to have a year where they think, "Oh, maybe we shouldn't even do it this year." Right? So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
As someone who didn't grow up a Bengals fan cuz that's what gives you the perspective you have.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts when you see like I guess you're learning even if because they were older players too for you, like you didn't know who they were, but does it give you a grasp of the history, I guess, would be the first question of the
I
Bengals.
think so. I do. I mean, obviously, I've been learning as I've been on this podcast. I've been doing my research. I'm getting better at it. But I just think it's very interesting to like compare and contrast to like the teams that I follow or even other teams that you hear about with other Ring of Honors. And I honestly didn't realize how much history the Bengals had as an organization because I knew in terms of like teams that joined, they weren't exactly near the front. So it was just very interesting for me to like see like that different kind of perspective and realize how much history there is when I didn't honestly think there was when I first started all of this.
Well, and the biggest problem there is the decade and a half of the 90s into the early 2000s that made the laughing stock moniker and the bungles and all
Yeah.
that. But even for myself, who grew up a diehard fan from the time I cared about football, like again, as a kid, what do you hear about? Super Bowls, right? And
Mhm.
so for me, it was, oh, they made the Super Bowl in 1981 when I was 2 years old. And then,
Mhm.
okay, the first year I really, really cared about the Bengals, they made the Super Bowl again. So you could hang your hat on going to the Super Bowl. Well, as I got older, I started to understand, wait a minute now. Paul Brown brought this team to life in the 1968 season. If you look at their records from there throughout the 70s too, like they had some good teams.
Mhm.
And, you know, again, the Steelers overshadowed them a little bit because they won so many Super Bowls in the 70s. But, you know, looking at their records and how competitive they actually were, it's actually very instructive for me even to say, wait a minute, who is Lamar Parrish? Let me look back and see what he did for the team and how good were they. And I tell you what, it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because I feel like that can apply to, like, when you're talking about just, like, regular team, like, Ring of Honor Hall of Fames, but then you can
Mhm.
even take that to other guys when you look at just, like, the National Football Hall of Fame in Canton. Like, I feel like there's a lot of individual players who will get overshadowed by guys who are on teams that went to 4 or 5 Super Bowls. Like, when you start looking at these, like, New England Patriots guys who are all gonna start showing up in,
Yeah,
like, from
that's
that
right.
early 2000 Patriots dynasty that are all gonna start showing up. They're all gonna have the added benefit of winning 3 or 4 Super Bowls apiece
Mhm.
on their resume when it comes time to enter Canton. When you have other guys with the same amount of talent that don't, it's just very interesting to see how that can sway decisions all across the board.
Well, not, you know, the perfect example for me is Willie Anderson. Willie Anderson was probably the best right tackle in all of football from about year 2 or 3 in the league. So he comes in '97 or '98. He's amazing by 1999, 2000, all the way into the early aughts. But he doesn't make like an all-pro team, first team, until they go 11-5 in 2005. And it's like, I understand like MVP usually goes to the guy on the best
Mhm,
team, the best quarterback on the best team, whatever. But my goodness, you know, let's try to be objective as we look at these
mhm,
season after season after season and say that guy's really good. Why don't we give him some props, some, you know, kudos, because now he's fighting, or people are fighting for him to make the Hall of Fame. His own peers like Ray Lewis and, you
mhm.
know, all these guys that tried to get around him to sack Carson Palmer or John Kitna or whomever, all they want to do is come talk about how great he was. Bill Cowher has done testimonials for him, and yet he's not in the Hall of Fame and the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And it's just
Yeah.
like, you know, you don't need to go 11-5 to make an All-Pro team if you're that good. And I
Mhm,
wish they'd rectify that, and maybe they have over the years a little better, but I don't think so. I think you're right, and that's how you saw like even the '70s Pittsburgh Steelers. They kept making the Hall of Fame, like, even when I was, like, in high school or in college,
mhm.
into the '90s and the early 2000s, you'd have a Steeler make the
Yeah.
Hall of Fame, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, he played on Super Bowl teams." I'm like, "Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
It's just an interesting dynamic because you do see it play out, like, way later than it probably should,
Mhm.
which I just think is the most interesting part about the way the Hall of Fame works now. Is like, obviously, you have the obvious first ballot guys that go in the first year they're nominated for it, but then you have others who just show up years later who played on Super Bowl winning teams all these years ago, and you're just like it's kind of just like a head scratcher sometimes. You're like, "Wait," like, that's where I get confused a little bit, and I feel like that's still where, like, I wouldn't say the word controversial is the best word, but I would say that's where I think most people get a little bit confused with the whole voting system there.
Right, and they do it differently. Now in, like, baseball, there's 400 voters that send in their ballot
Mhm,
every year. This is different. They have a room full of writers and
mhm,
media members who sit down and talk. Um, but the problem with that, and maybe you could argue that it's better because they talk it out and they come up with a consensus. But the problem with that is if a guy has a vendetta, for one, um, and I can think of a guy who kind of had a vendetta, it seemed, against like Art Monk, the great
mhm,
Redskins receiver. He should have gotten in way earlier than he did. Chris Carter lasted so many years before he got in, and I was told by a media member that the media hated Chris Carter because he was kind of a jerk to the media, you know, in the
mhm,
locker rooms and things like that. And that's kind of why they took so long to put him in. I'm like, are you
Hmm.
kidding? He was like second all time in everything when he retired, behind only
Hmm.
Jerry Rice.
Yeah.
So that's just crazy to me. And I know Peter King, the longtime SI writer, Sports Illustrated, his first job out of Ohio University was covering the Bengals. And while I think he has a lot of respect for for like Paul Brown and the way things were done per se, he comes away from there telling these stories all the time about how cheap the Bengals were and all the stereotypes. And
Yeah.
he's in that room with those writers voting on this stuff. And it's hard for me to believe that he, along with a few others, aren't holding some sort of a grudge or something.
Hmm.
So, I'm just
Yeah.
hopeful. I'm hopeful that, like I said, that they can finally start opening up, because for years it was just Anthony Munoz and that was it.
Hmm. But yeah, it's exciting to see everyone turn a new leaf. Obviously, again, I think to just kind of sum up everything, I think the Bengals knocked it out of the park with the Ring of Honor this year. I think it was amazing. But to kind of jump a little bit to a little bit more of current Bengals, Shamar Stewart has been making more headlines recently. Just when you think he couldn't stay out of the news long enough, he's back.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, you guys are so tired of talking about this. Like, I
Yeah,
feel badly for you. And when you asked me to come on, at first I was like, oh my goodness, it's a good thing the Ring of Honor happened, because like
yeah,
the dog days are truly here. I mean, we're
hmm,
mid July, and training camp's going to start up in a few weeks.
hmm.
I guess actually within a week or two. Um,
Yeah, I was gonna say we're like right on the door of it.
so now there'll actually be action. If Trey Hendrickson or Shamar Stewart still aren't signed once training camp starts, then that's something that's actually viable to talk about, right? But the
Yeah, and
thing
it's
that
like
came out this
confirmed
week,
news.
yeah, but the thing that came out this week about him working out at Texas A&M, first of all, especially the big colleges, alums of those schools always work out back at the place.
Yeah, like it's
It's
a
a place,
normal thing for people to do.
yeah, it's a place they're worshipped. It's a place they can go for free to work out. It's a place they already have a like a they have a relationship with the strength coach, right? So they
Hmm.
can keep them on their program. So like when it leaked that, hey, he's going back to Texas A&M, Shamar Stewart, that was a nothing burger to me. And then somebody tried to say, well, he might try to play at Texas A&M. Like, I know NIL has changed things,
Yes.
but there's still rules if you enter the
Yeah.
NFL draft. And by the way, he wasn't enrolled in school all
Hmm.
spring. So
Yeah.
like, no, he's not going back to play for Texas A&M this year. That's
Yeah.
idiotic.
Yeah, it's just crazy, like, the media it's like the whole I have very strong opinions on the Shamar Stewart situation. I have been very vocal on how it's like, I look at it from, like obviously, I don't play football, but I am a Division
Right.
One athlete, so I have my perspective on that, so, like, I have very strong opinions on where I stand on Shamar Stewart and Shamar Stewart's agents' kind of negotiation tactics, but I don't necessarily blame him for going back to Texas A&M, especially if it's just like final touch-ups before training camp. If he's getting himself ready because he didn't do OTAs, and maybe this is a sign that he is showing up at training camp. Obviously, no one can jump to any conclusions because there hasn't been anything that's come out about that. But like, I honestly was just like, "Well, why is this news? Like,
No,
go
it's
report on the probably 80 other people from the draft that have all gone back to their colleges at some point of this summer. The only reason Shamar Stewart's coming out is because he's in a dispute with the Bengals. Like,
yeah,
that's
the
it.
thing for us to talk about, or the news of it, is that these people overreacted. It's not even
Yeah.
the thing itself. And it's like, listen, he came to Cincinnati for part of the OTAs. He stood in
Mhm.
shorts and a t-shirt. He held that little tackling thing very timidly and didn't want to get touched at all. But if he doesn't have a contract once training camp starts, he's not going to be there.
Yeah.
So, like, that's if he wants to get or stay in shape, he's going to have to be doing it somewhere else. And
Mhm.
again, go where you're familiar, go where you're all that. And your point about the way the agents are doing this, and especially once we learned that actually other teams have these clauses and contracts, and it's not just something that
Every
they
other team,
are
actually. The
cheating. Yeah,
Bengals were
it's
the
not
only
just
ones
something.
that didn't
Yeah,
have it.
Caroline, this is where I get so upset, because there are things the Bengals deserve criticism for, but when this happens, it just becomes same old Bengals, right? But
Yeah.
if you actually peel back the onion a little bit, you see, no, on this one, it's probably not the Bengals' fault, and
No,
or if it, yeah,
I've said it before on previous episodes. If it was the other way around and it was the Bengals were changing the language to something that was outside of a league norm, I could completely understand the frustration from the Shemar Stewart camp. Where I kind of am just like, I don't even understand where your argument is this is the Bengals transferring to something that the rest of the NFL does. This isn't like Shemar Stewart is the only rookie that has this type of verbiage in his contract. He's now just joining the other 32 people in his draft class, like in that first round, that all have this clause in there.
mhm.
So like that's where I'm like, it's not like they're making him any different. Granted, I can see where like the dispute is where like, oh, your last three draft picks didn't have to deal with that. Maybe the Bengals thought it wasn't a smart idea to keep that clause in the contract anymore based on like something behind the scenes that we as fans and spectators don't see. Like we can't control that. But like that's where like I get confused because I'm like, if he was being isolated, I could understand a little bit more, but you're not being isolated. Instead, you're going through what every other person in that first round has on their contract and is signed. You are just the only one that is throwing a fit about it. Like that's where I
Well,
get a little bit
yeah,
confused.
and to your point, when we were in like May and there were still 11 first rounders who were unsigned, maybe you could argue, well, maybe they're holding out for the same reasons Shamar is, if I'm Shamar's agent. And so you kind of ride that wave, hoping that 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of these guys get their way, and then maybe we can get
Hmm.
our way. But once that dust settles, and I don't know now, Caroline, are there even any more first rounders who aren't signed?
I believe Shamar Stewart is the last one that hasn't signed a contract.
Which I had forgotten because a year ago, Mims actually didn't sign until like today, July
Yeah.
17th or 18th. But he had signed that waiver where he could participate in OTAs.
Yes.
So that wasn't the distraction, right? It wasn't the
Hmm.
thing that you had to talk about all the time. So no, this is incredibly bad. And the problem becomes too, like the argument is as a fan and maybe even as people who cover the league, Shamar Stewart was kind of a reach when they took him where they did.
Yep.
And so for you to hold out and not come is a very tough thing to swallow because you are already behind the 8 ball when it comes to, you know, you're not Miles Garrett, number 1 overall pick coming in,
No.
like
You're not even
you,
like an Abdul Carter. Like,
right, right. So you're not somebody who can just like make all these demands. So
yeah.
I, I don't like it at all. And
Mm-mm.
I don't ever want to see them like just burn a pick. Right.
Yeah.
But my goodness, at some point you might just throw your hands up and say, you know what, go back in the draft next year and see how it goes.
Yeah, the other thing about this whole situation that really throws me off is while you're dealing with this, you also have the star player at your position who's actually holding out for a contract dispute. Like for me, if like I'm coming in as a first year on a brand new team, they pick me in the first round, so I'm the first person they wanted. And the star guy at my spot is currently not showing up to practice because he's doing this contract thing. For me, like if I'm in that position, that's an excellent opportunity for me to prove myself as a starter, as a leader coming in because that's what they want me to do.
Hmm.
Like Shamar Stewart had this amazing opportunity to really assert himself as that guy if either Trey Hendrickson retires in a couple years or he doesn't sign. He had this opportunity basically sitting on a silver platter and he doesn't take it. Like
That's right.
that's where like the athlete mentality I come in and I'm like you have to earn everything you are given at any level of athletics. And the way that the college NIL deal with that, the dust now pretty much all settling, is going to change that. Like I've expressed, I'm intrigued to see how it goes in the next couple of years as we really see like the NIL shift the way the NCAA works, especially with football, which will directly impact the NFL and the Bengals. But it almost to me feels like he thinks he has more negotiating power than he actually
He
does,
doesn't have any.
and he doesn't have any. Like that's where I almost draw blanks and I'm just like I don't understand what leverage you believe that you have at this point.
And oh, by the way, are his agents like 20 years old or something? Because I mean, all you'd have to do is queue up Hard Knocks from like the every time the Bengals were the focus of Hard Knocks. And you see, like
Yeah.
I remember Andre Smith, the big offensive tackle out of Alabama,
Hmm.
back in like 09 or 10 or 11 or whatever year that was. Well, it would have been like 09. Like Katie Blackburn just looked across the table and said, "You're an idiot. Like we're not bending over backwards for you. These are our terms." And I
Yeah,
remember her telling the agent, "You need to get him in here now." Like just,
yeah,
and they're not going to change. And again, to their detriment, or maybe kudos to them, right? For standing on their own, whatever. That's how they do business. But again, this isn't even about that. This isn't
no,
about dollars and cents or setting precedents that only help the Brown family. This is about doing something the way the whole league is doing it.
yeah.
I just can't get
Like
over it. It's amazing.
it's so confusing to me. Like I could probably go in depth on it on 2 hour for like 2 hours of just like how insane this whole situation is, but we don't have the time for that. And I honestly don't think anyone would want to hear a 3 hour Shamar Stewart rant. So it's just an interesting situation. And I mean, it's given us stuff to talk about, but like you've got to figure it out. Like the season's about to start. Like we've talked over and over again on how important the first couple of weeks are for the Bengals organization. So we avoid what they seem to have been plagued with for the last 3 years, which is an awful start to the year.
Hmm.
I think it's like super important, especially if they want to challenge in the competitive AFC North and in a competitive AFC just in general. um, we've got to start strong and we really need to figure this stuff out because they don't need any media circus surrounding them once team stuff starts. And right now it seems to be them and the Steelers pretty much have everything circling them between Trey Hendrickson and TJ Watt both not signing contracts coming into preseason.
Which is actually kind of refreshing because Pittsburgh's usually the bastion of everything doing the right way and all that. And the
Yeah.
Bengals are the ones with the problem. And of course you see all the arrests up in Cleveland. So it's
Oh
like, well,
yeah. They're trying
okay.
to take some of the heat off, but we'll
Well, hey,
see.
we might have to do it. We'll probably do a show together again next week as Owen's taking
Yeah.
extended time off. Maybe then, if we're not given anything else to talk about, Shamar Stewart will be center of attention yet again. So
Yeah.
we're probably
Well,
not
fingers
done.
crossed we can talk about something else, but we'll see. That'll be a story for next week if it is. But
All right.
all right, but it's been a great episode. So tune in next week to see Seth and I back again. For Seth Shaner, I'm Caroline Palmer. Everyone have a great day and who day.
Who day, everybody.